As African nations intensify their efforts to derive greater value from their natural resources, Guinea has become the latest country to ban the export of unrefined minerals. The West African nation has prohibited the export of raw gold, requiring all gold produced in the country to be refined locally before being shipped abroad. Guinea's President General Mamadi Doumbouya says the decision was taken following consultations with industry stakeholders and warns that companies violating the directive could face license suspensions and the termination of mining contracts. To unpack these developments, we joined this evening by political analyst, writer and research fellow at the Middle East Africa Research Institute, Kenneth Kgwadi. A very good evening to you, sir. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business. Welcome.
Good evening to you and to the listeners at home. Thanks for having me.
So, Guinea is the latest African country to action beneficiation, or at least start putting measures in place to ensure this. What does this tell us about the growing push for beneficiation across the African continent? It's been a subject of discussion for many decades, but now finally we're starting to see some action.
It has, even when you look at the formation of the African Union, the Organization of African Union, it was basically leaders of Africa coming together to say that our resources have been extracted and have not developed us or have not been used in line with our economic needs. So we have to do something. So there have been discussions over time by different leaders of different countries about colonialism, about imperialism. And now you are starting to see countries, especially the countries that were colonized by France, because France is different from other ex or former colonizers, because it has never really left the continent. So they've always had direct involvement, either through military or through economic and political involvement in matters concerning their former colonies. You look at and most of these countries which were in the hands of France, most of them are experiencing these coups you've seen in Burkina Faso, Mali, as well as Guinea, and then you saw Niger, Gabon, Central African Republic, Chad, Mauritania, Madagascar, Comoros, because France have made it very conducive for juntas or junta leaders to identify this gap and trying to really fill it. So Guinea is not the first country to come up with measures like this in a bid to try to create economic opportunities for its own people. So we saw lately that Tanzania and Uganda have already taken a decision to ban the export of their mineral resources. And then Zimbabwe also is on the list, and we know that also Ghana is on the list. They are preparing to ban the export of their minerals because they've realized that having their own refinery would really assist, as we've learned from South Africa, which was developed by the discovery of gold and diamond, and they were able to create some opportunities through minimal refinery or processing of those minerals. So
And
these countries also are shifting towards industrialization
And
in
and
that
I'd like
part.
us and I'd like us to go down that direction, Khwadi. We spoke about this last week. Zimbabwe's move to restrict the export of raw lithium, and the sentiment is there. And the big question, however, is do countries like Guinea and Zimbabwe and the others that we've listed have the infrastructure and that refining capacity that's actually needed in order for the successful implementation of these policies?
That is a very interesting, important question to ask. I don't think that they do have a capacity to do this work which have been done in other countries, including South Africa, because there are some other African countries which export their mineral deposits to South Africa to be processed. So I don't think that they have got a capacity to do so. But when you listen to the leadership or to the political leadership of Ghana, of Guinea, the president there is saying that they are about to complete the refinery in the capital Conakry, where it is expected that it is the biggest. I think it's the second refinery that they will be having. So this is said to 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 be able to handle around 250 tons of gold. So I'm not sure because politicians are politicians. So I'm not sure if really this will happen. And if this does not happen, then it will really have serious financial implications to the economy of Guinea. So it's better that we just hope that the politicians or the government really does have a plan in place to make sure that the economy does not suffer as a result of becoming or to be seen as too revolutionary, because we know that the current president was not voted into office. There was a coup in 2021, and then there was a decision earlier this year to swan him in as the president. So he would really love to obviously maintain his popularity through coming up with measures aligning with people's demands.
Is there enough of a momentum of countries beneficiating and introducing local beneficiation policies for us to say that there's an emergence of a new era of African resource nationalism? Or are these just sporadic cases that we're witnessing? What is your thought on that?
I think there is that hunger, especially amongst young people. So we've seen in South Africa with the emergence of the EFF, although they have not really won the elections to be able to govern, but their influence since 2013, even when Julius Malema was in the ANC, they've always been spoke. They've always been so out loud about issues of nationalizations, and they were talking about this processing of the minerals in South Africa so that they can create employment opportunities for young people. So even other countries, Uganda, there are people who are young people, especially who are joining in this conversation. So you have got a different leadership who are relatively old and they were involved in liberation movement. And I'm thinking that they are scared because they don't want to scare the market. They don't want to, you know, when they look in the cases such as that of Zimbabwe and what happened after the Zimbabwean government decided to take back their land, and then they are so scared that they don't want the economic implications to affect their own people. But the young people are very vocal about making sure that the beneficiation, I mean, this material, the raw materials does benefit young people, because the young people in the continent are the ones who are subjected to hunger. We see them trying to cross to Europe to try and seek better lives, and 15 of them last week just died. They drowned in the Mediterranean Sea.
Mm. I'd like us to wrap up by looking at what this means, this emergence of, and demand for smelters, refineries. What does this mean for the African Continental Free Trade Area? And maybe if we could look at the funding instruments that are available for beneficiation infrastructure development.
So yeah, we know that this came into effect in 2019. So it has really been, although in black and white, it exists, the African continent trade agreement. So it will be very difficult, because when you look at the infrastructure, things like roads which connect or which should be connecting these regions across the continent. So it really becomes very difficult. So countries such as South Africa, because of its industrialization nature, so it becomes the gateway and the hub. So it seems to be one of the main countries which are going to benefit. So look, the countries that are underdeveloped, so they are not going to benefit as much as South Africa would benefit. So for this to work out quite well, the regions in the African continent needs to work together to try and fix things like the infrastructure, to try and build the infrastructure, which would then connect the countries in those regions so that it becomes easier to trade amongst themselves. And we know that, or we've seen that it will then contribute largely, as we've been told by the World Bank, this or trading amongst the continent. And then this would mean that they will tackle the challenges that the continent is facing with. So this might be an opportunity for African countries as the world is still trying to, as the world is still trying to redefine itself. We are seeing conflicts through in the in the international stage. So this might be an opportunity for African countries to try and make this work.
Kenneth, we'll have to leave it at that for today, but thank you so much for taking us through that. That's a political analyst, writer, and research fellow at the Middle East Africa Research Institute, Kenneth Kgwadi. It somehow reminds me of the kind of conversations we were having during the Africa Matters Summit. Even though our topic was really around financing climate change, here I would like to turn the spotlight on this financing, beneficiation infrastructure on the African continent, and one of the main questions, or one of the main propositions, is that development banks ought to be playing a greater role in the financing of climate change, and perhaps also here in the financing of a beneficiation, infrastructure in order to enable this transition. It's 23 minutes after 6.